Welcome to the Classical Happy Hour. I'm your host, Martin Davids. This is the show where my guests and I talk about music while enjoying a tasty beverage. Then we usually try to play some music together, but not tonight. Today's guest is Koji Otsuki. What's up, Koji?
Not much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to finally get you on the show. For my listeners who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about what you do for work these days?
Well, I direct a Bach Collegium Fort Wayne here in Fort Wayne. Now we're recording this in Fort Wayne, Indiana. But I actually work for a Marlboro music organization. That's my day job, and I'm the head music librarian, and also a software engineer, and also a Bach coach at the festival.
Do you do Bach software?
I do not.
Is there such a type of software?
Well, there is a app that you can actually buy on an iPad that's got all the cantata information. I
Really?
actually do have this app myself.
You can just say like what's cantata 69 and it'll tell you.
Yes, it will tell you.
Sweet. Do you have to subscribe or is it free?
No, you're gonna have to purchase it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry to get sidetracked there. So Marlboro, isn't that in Vermont?
That is in Vermont.
Don't they have like some kind of like Vermont curry sauce or something?
Well, House Foods, this is a company in Japan. They produce a very nice curry roux, and that's called Vermont curry. That is correct. And then I personally like this type of curry very much.
What color is it?
I mean, it's so hard to,
Is it yellow? Is it green? Like
Yeah, well, I mean,
red?
it's not yellow. It's kind of brownish, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, tell me a little about your education.
Okay. I got my undergrad degree at Temple in Philadelphia, and that was actually on non-performing music. So it is a Bachelor of Science in Music degree. It's a kind of weird degree, just because at the time I wasn't really playing instruments. Specifically, I used to play the violin, and I was a Suzuki kid. So growing up, I played the whole Suzuki stuff, and I also played the trumpet growing up. But at the time I got into near college in high school, I had to quit my violin study and then also trumpet. There was this like kind of like a trauma of an experience in high school, and I couldn't even listen to the Western music for a few years. So I was just, studying ryuteki. That's a Japanese traditional court music instrument. And while I was playing this bamboo flute, I think I somehow healed. And this type of music, gagaku, is contrapunto. And so I realized that I really enjoy counterpoint. And I start listening to a lot of fugues and anything imitative kind of point, and I realized that I guess I really loved Bach, and so I decided that I want to study Western music one more time, and but at the point in Japan it's kind of too late. Japanese education system is like an the escalator that at this point you're gonna have to get onto it, so that when you are about to enter college, then you have to be already elevated to that level. So entrance examination or audition can be very hard, and
So there aren't kind of like fringe colleges that are people that just kind of aren't ready for the regular colleges? Like cheaper schools?
Well, yeah. But one thing that I really wanted to get done was I was going through this little medical treatment in Japan. I couldn't leave the country until I finished the treatment. So I was just keep playing this gagaku instrument until I was ready to take on the next step. And then I realized that I just wanted to just come to the States. I had a dual citizenship, Japan and the U.S. And so I figured I can just come to the States and then get into this music program. And so that, just because I didn't have an instrument to play, I did this Bachelor of Science in Music degree. And so after that, I took a year off. I worked for Marlboro during that year part-time. And that's when I started this relationship with this organization. It's a long relationship that I'm having with this organization. And then after that, I got into a tempo again for the master's program in choral conducting. And at that point, my course was set that I really wanted to do Bach cantatas and oratorios and passions and all that stuff.
So have you met a lot of people that came to love Bach through playing a traditional Japanese flute?
No. No. But I mean, there are some people who really enjoyed that gagaku style counterpoint. But then, they didn't really talk about Bach. No. Yeah. So I did my master's degree in choral conducting, and then Temple hired me right off. So I was teaching adjunct at Temple, directing women's chorus and teaching basic and intermediate conducting classes. And but my mind was like, I need to get out of here. I need to start something. I need to immerse myself in Bach study. I needed to go somewhere. And year 2001, I went to Belgium and Brussels to observe Philippe Heddewege's rehearsals. And then also I saw some Sixfald Kaukin lessons, and Bart was there, Wieland was also there, and some other renowned early music people giving lessons. And when I heard all this musical rhetorical names of figures coming out from the teachers in those lessons, I'm like, oh my God, I've only read those stuff in the musical rhetorical figures and stuff like that in books, and they are actually using those lingo in actual lesson, and I was kind of blown away by all that stuff. So I strongly felt that I needed to get out of Philadelphia and immerse myself in Bach study, but of course I didn't know where at that point. And then eventually that I found my way to get to Tokyo to study with Masaki Suzuki, who is the director of Bach Collegium Japan. And I had the two best years of my life there in Tokyo studying with Masaki.
So, I mean, how did you end up there though? Like, I know you're a Japanese citizen, but is there any story behind you getting to study there?
My dad was at the point a professor at a national university in Japan. So he knew of this system where a foreign student wanting to study with him, and he could apply for this scholarship that would be given by the Japanese government. So he was just talking, maybe Koji, you can try that. And I'm like, really? So, Japanese government will give money to those students, Japanese students who would study abroad. But then my case is that I wanted to go to Japan to study, right? So then the only the scholarship that the Japanese government was giving, and the only program that would not require any auditions or the entrance exam to get into this, like a particular university. That was the only way, and that was to get this scholarship for foreign students, for Japanese government So meaning that non-Japanese citizen coming to Japan to study, and that was the only way. And that was the only way to study with somebody that you want to study with in Japan without going through the whole auditions or the preparation process. You can basically do whatever you want to do to study this with this accepting professor. And so I felt that this is the only way. But then, of course, then it's only eligible if you were a non-Japanese citizen. So what I had to do was to waive my Japanese citizenship so that I can only be a U.S. citizen, so that I can be eligible to even apply for this scholarship. So I did waive my Japanese citizenship. I went to the Consulate General of Japan in New York, and then I had my Japanese passport stamped void. And Japanese citizenship and Bach, it's no-brainer, right? So I had my passport, voided. It's got a lot of holes in it right now, and then I was eligible. So I applied for this scholarship, and I took the Japanese language exam, and I had to go through some interview process, and then finally I got the fellowship, the scholarship from Japanese government. Of course, I had to get an okay from Masaki to be my accepting professor, and so he said okay, and so I was able to get this scholarship, and then went to Japan.
So, like, did you know him? Like, how did you just send him a cold call email and were like, hey, I'm thinking about giving up my citizenship so I can come study with you?
No, the first time that encounter was, that was in the year 2000, when it was a huge year for all the Bach fans. It was a 250-year anniversary of his death, and in Leipzig they had this Bachfest Leipzig 2000. It was a huge deal, and all the major players and directors were there in Leipzig. I even saw, was it the Gustav Leonhardt just walking by, on the street, and I saw Tom Koopman walking around, and I saw some like Joshua Rifkin having a little coffee there in the coffee house. It was really crazy. Like all the people that you've only seen on a TV or something, they were there, just walking around. And of course, there was in this Neue Bachgesellschaft meeting there as well. And so you saw Christoph Wolff and all the other Bach scholars, there as well. And so one day, I was in Nikolaikirche. That's one of the churches that Bach, was performing Bach cantatas in. And the pew in Nikolaikirche was extremely uncomfortable. My butt was in pain, so I wasn't really enjoying. Towards the end of this concert, I was only thinking about this butt pain. Okay, and so I was just coming out from Nikolaikirche. Maybe that was like 10 p.m. Really long organ concert, and then so I was walking, along this Augustusplatz. And I saw this Japanese gentleman walking by with other Japanese people. And I thought, I see Japanese tourists. But then I saw this guy in the middle with this long white hair. And then I realized, okay, that's Masaki Suzuki that I've seen in the photo in the CD liner jacket and stuff. So I went to him and I said, in Japanese, my name is Koji, and I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I'm looking forward to your concert, and it's so great to meet you, and then we shook hands, and then that was that. So, and then that was in year 2000, and then that was 2002 that I was trying to get this scholarship. So I had to actually talk to some people, and I think it was Michael Marison Bach scholar, then from Swarthmore College. Now he's retired, but I think that was him who was able to provide me with Masaki's email address. So I wrote him this email saying that, and I was the guy, the Japanese guy, in one evening in Leipzig that I came to talk to. And I said, can I study with you? And then he was like, are you kidding me? Like you go to Germany to study Bach. You go to Europe to study Bach. Yeah, so, and that's kind of like ordering a beautiful dish of pasta in a sushi bar. And so I wrote back saying that, if you can get a nice dish of pasta in a sushi bar, I don't care. You go to sushi bar. And he was like, okay, point taken. And so he said, okay, I can be your accepting professor. So I went to Tokyo to study with him.
So did that make you love Bach more or less?
Well, at that point, I was already into Bach quite a bit.
It was too late by then?
Yeah, I guess you can say that. But it was, the terminal stage of the whole thing. And but I mean, it's awesome because he's also a huge Bach guy himself. And so sometimes, when he was making those recordings, so Bach cantatas, sometimes I go to him, well, as his student, I was allowed to kind of accompany him wherever he went. Basically, that when he was recording all the CDs in Kobe, I was there listening in. And then when they were doing concerts, I will be in all the rehearsals. I didn't think I missed any note played in a rehearsal during that time. Except when they were performing Messiah and things like that, I kind of skipped the...
If it wasn't Bach?
Yeah, because it wasn't Bach. But I mean, I observed some of the rehearsals and just to really enjoy and visually see how they are playing the instrument, because I was also really interested in, at the point I was studying Baroque violin with Natsumi Wakamatsu, who's the concertmaster of the Bach Collegium of Japan. And I studied also flute traverso and natural trumpet and some other instruments with those players from the Bach Collegium of Japan. So I was so curious, and especially Hidemi Suzuki, that was, of course, Masaki's younger brother, playing the cello. And, you can tell how music is going by just seeing him play. He's such an amazing continuo player. Of course, he's a great cellist, and that's first and foremost. But then, as a continuo player, visually, you can really see the music just by seeing his, playing. Visually, I'm kind of taking on all his expression that he's making, and I think I must have learned maybe equally, if not more, from Hidemi Suzuki at the time. So, and of course, I was seeing how Masaki was directing, but not only that, I was seeing how Masaki would put together a rehearsal schedule, and how he would, of course, utilize all the staff members there, and then having the, for example, timpani transported into the venue. Thinking of how long the surface leather is going to take to acclimate into the hall's temperature, and learning stuff like having the timpani off the stage so that the direct light's not going to be hitting the timpani as those instruments were acclimating. You name it. I just learned so much by seeing how he operates and how he directs and how he organizes things and how he prepares, because at that point the Bach digital website wasn't, of course, not available. So you had to have this microfiche from SBB, the Staatsbibliothek Berlin, all the facsimile stuff in the microfiche. So he would get into this, microfiche machine and then start printing out those necessary sources before each project, so that he would have the original sources, nearby, and all that thing that he was doing. And I think that is becoming the basis of how I prepare stuff for the Bach Collegium for Wayne.
Cool. Sounds like you had an intense couple of years there.
Yeah.
So how did you end up back here?
Yeah, so after this 2-year study, of course, I had to come back to the U.S. And, before, of course, I was based in Philadelphia. Since I had people that I knew from Philadelphia, initially I went back to Philadelphia. But at the same time, in Tokyo, actually, when I was still with Masaki there, Wendy Gillespie from IU was visiting the university there in Tokyo, and I had a little chance to talk to her, and she was basically telling me, if you wanted to do Bach cantatas, then IU would be the place, because we have oboe majors, bassoon majors, Baroque bassoon majors, and then all the strings. Why don't you just come to IU? To pursue the early music. That at that point, of course, it was still called EMI, not HBI.
The Early Music Institute.
Yeah, Early Music Institute. And so I sent this audition recording that I made in Tokyo, to IU before I left to go back to Philadelphia. And then somehow I got accepted, and so I did my doctorate in Bloomington from 2005, and that was a huge shock to me, because of course I was with Masaki, who had this holistic view of everything. And, not only that, he really understood how continuo works. But also that he really knew, so much about the music and history and theology, the contemporary theology. So he basically had everything to be the person who would lead a Bach cantata ensemble. So coming to Bloomington, of course, there are many teachers there, but then, of course, they will bring their own speciality. So if it was Stanley, then it's all string side of things, and Paul Elliott will be talking about the vocal side of things. But nobody was actually really holistic in a sense, and also will be able to bring something about like rhetorical stuff or the theological stuff into the picture, because I was so used to doing that with Masaki. And so it was a little shock to me that I didn't have anyone to really, talk about those things.
Not even like in the musicology department, like some professors?
Of course, at IU, they have, Dan Melamed, and he's such an amazing Bach scholar. But when I talked about those musical rhetorical figures, or theological musicology, so a lot to do with the theology, he's actually totally right about this, that it's just all hypothetical. You can't really find a good evidence to support your ideas. So you have those hypotheses and you stop there. Of course, you can have maybe circumstantial evidence here and there, but then he was wisely just telling me that if you are trying to write a good paper on those topics, it's going to be difficult to make it really convincing. But then that was the area that I was very much interested in at that point. And
Well, I've definitely worked with conductors that seem completely convinced in a theological interpretation of a Bach cantata,
right,
and they seem to have really strong ideas about why that is, and they seem really convinced. So
Yes.
at least, even if it's wrong, it's you're expressing something.
That's right. So, as a director, I can keep pursuing those things. But when you're talking about, because musicologists' aim or the goal would be to produce a paper, right? And that the paper that can be accepted by other musicologists. But I think that to really make the product as a scholastic paper, I figured that was maybe the difficult part, or at least that they were trying to tell me that it's going to be difficult. But as a performer, that is still my focal point. Yeah.
What made it meaningful to Bach,
That's right.
I'm sure he had an idea.
Yeah.
And he's got all these really intense theological scriptures,
That's right. Yeah. We know that
There's
he
so
owned.
much suffering and pain and stuff that goes on all the time in these cantatas.
Yeah. But I mean, if you kind of, take a look into something like the Theologia Crucis or Theologia Crucis, that's the theology of the cross, it is really amazing that it's a really good musical embodiment of that theology. If you see so many of those cantatas, once you start seeing from that standpoint, the theological standpoint, it just makes sense. And sometimes in details too, in each aria or movement, sometimes you see those figuration and repeated in another movement, but then you can totally see the connection from that particular aria into this, another movement. And it is really fascinating. Sometimes that, it's as if you're having this glimpse into the actual blueprint of the Bach composition.
I don't know what that is. Maybe it's somebody's cell phone or something. But people see patterns in everything, and especially in the music of Bach, people write these really weird numerological things and post them on the internet and stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy to get carried away with that stuff and have it make connections in your mind.
Yeah. Well, if you ask me about this numerology, I gotta say, it's actually very easy to make up stuff. Just finding any particular number and then finding that number, what that number matches with what in the Bible or whatnot. So I don't actually buy some of the stuff that I see on the internet.
Yeah, definitely not.
But then, of course, then some stuff as simple as like number 14. If you add BACH and in the gematria, then that it's going to be 14. If you make all the alphabets A1, B2, C3, and then if you add it, then it's going to be 14. Some people would talk about the fact that when in Saint Matthew Passion, when the centurion making self-confession of wahrlich, wahrlich, dieser ist Gottes Sohn gewesen, he was truly Son of God, and you have 14 notes in the continuo part, and I think something like that, and I can see that happening. The Bach would embody himself or embed himself in those places, because the fact that was the place Gentile making the self-confession for the first time in the Passion narrative, and also that it is known that the artists was like Renaissance into Baroque, that some artists would put himself into their artworks, like Rembrandt would paint himself in the sacred paintings or drawings. And
Okay, but aren't you assuming that you know something about Bach's composing process? Like, nobody was in the room with him. Like, do you think he's like, oh, I think I'll come up with a complex mathematical way to put my name in this one part of this gigantic passion, and because it's gonna add up to 14? Like, or is he just writing music because that's what he hears in his mind, you know?
Yeah, but just because the fact that and it is such a significant part, theologically speaking, that is that part is very, very significant, and also that when you actually see the 1736 facsimile, or actually the holograph, you start seeing that Bach is, he's a stingy man. Usually he would use all the spaces that's available in that paper, because paper was also pretty expensive at that point. And so, but then he's all of a sudden around this particular area, relaxing his writing, and he's using a lot of space, as if he wanted to do something with the spacing with this music. So when this chorus, this two major chorus happens, those 14 notes that I was just talking about, he has this tenor line, so evangelist line coming in, and there's two major chorus in the center of the page, and the tenor line coming out. It's kind of like seeing a big cross placed in the center of this particular page. So if you see something like that, of course, then you can, just imagine things and then make stuff up. But then just seeing those things, it seems like he was trying to definitely do something about it. I think that the significance of this particular part, that when Gentile, making self-confession, I think that is something that he probably for him, maybe not for other people to see, because he knew, not everybody would see his holograph anyway, right? But I think that he somehow wanted to, for himself, do something about those two measures. And so from that standpoint, some people saying that, the reason why the bass part has 14 notes, I think, you can kind of say that maybe that is connected to the gematria, the BACH. I don't know.
I mean, the guy was good with math and fitting things together. I mean, he had an incredible mind for it, so it's not like he couldn't have come up with something that added up to 14. But
yeah, it would have been easy for him.
Yeah, but I just don't know how he wrote music, and nobody was in there with him.
Right. But I think, though,
maybe he just thought that looked really cool on the page. So anyway, enough of those Bach conspiracies. If you didn't want to be a musician, is there anything else that interested you?
Wow, that's a good question.
Did you ever want to play baseball or?
No, I wasn't really good at sports. Well, I think I would be interested in being the software engineer. I'm kind of doing a little bit of that for Marlboro, and but that's just writing internal applications, like internal web apps for the festival staffer. So you're talking 3-4 people at most using my app or apps. But it would be really cool to just do that every day, as your career, and keep thinking about new ways to do things. And I think that'll be really fun. Just like well, maybe it's not like anything at all. Like, for example, if you're studying Bach cantata score, and then if you find this some logical idea of why he's doing this, and then that is a huge eureka moment for me. Having this part in the text that is saying something, and then you see this connection into something else, and that makes sense theologically and musically, and then that joy when you find something like that, again, almost like having a little glimpse into his thinking process or his composition process. It's kind of like that. It's so satisfying when you write an app. I'm actually just a JavaScript React developer, but when you write something and that actually finally works on a screen, oh my God, you want to shout saying, I'm, effing genius. Because it's so satisfying, very, very satisfying. And of course, then that means you're going to have to go through a lot of painful process of debugging and making sure that everything is working fine, and checking the Stack Overflow and every 5 minutes. You name it. It is a struggle because I'm just a novice programmer. But then when you see that your application is working and other people are coming in and using, and being very practical for them, it's such a satisfying feeling. So if I wasn't really doing music, then I would definitely be like a full-time software developer, maybe. Yeah.
I don't know how you could keep that Bach obsession in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, do something about that. So do you have anything cool coming up?
Well, I guess I'm directing this a group into a concert tomorrow, and you are my concert master. That's happening tomorrow, and then after that, I'm also for the Philadelphia Chamber Music Society. I'm directing this gamut Bach ensemble in doing 5 early Bach cantatas. So that'll be interesting. That's happening in early May. And then, of course, during the summer months, I'll be in Vermont, just in the library, being the librarian and Bach person. And
hitting the curry.
But I mean, I do like making Vermont curry in Vermont because it kind of makes sense, right?
It does, yeah. Can you really make it anywhere else?
No.
Is there anything you want to ask me?
Gosh. Well, do you remember when I first played with you?
Was it that Brahms thing?
No, it's the Mendelssohn thing.
The Mendelssohn.
Yeah.
St. Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You must thought of this unknown Asian guy coming into Fort Wayne, and I was playing the viola in that concert, where I usually actually don't play the viola. For whatever the reason, whenever I come here in Fort Wayne to play, it seems like I'm always playing the viola when I'm not playing the violoncello da spalla. So that's crazy. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even ask you about the da spalla.
Yeah. I mean, that's my voice right now. I kind of consider that's my main instrument, although I obviously I don't really perform a lot on that instrument. But back in November.
What's that thing for? Like solo? I mean, it's not a continuo instrument, is it?
It is not, although there is one surviving continuo part for that instrument, violoncello piccolo, in one of the Bach's small masses. But I don't know how it was used. We really don't know about that. My hypothesis is actually that somebody was leading from the cello, playing the violoncello piccolo. And but you need to have all the figures written in. So this continuo part does have figures. So it does say for violoncello piccolo and then having figures. So my feeling, my hypothesis is that somebody was trying to lead this ensemble from the cello chair, playing the violoncello, the spalla. So when I say violoncello piccolo and violoncello da spalla, they're kind of like same thing. But my theory actually is that all the violoncello piccolo, violoncelli piccoli are violoncelli da spalla, but not all the violoncelli da spalla are violoncelli piccoli. Do you understand what I mean? The point is, violoncello da spalla is a horizontally held cello, but it doesn't talk about the size, right? Mm-hmm. Any instrument, if you actually hold the big size Strad standard size cello horizontally, right? And that is, you can call that violoncello da spalla, because...
Why would you do that, though? Isn't that thing awkward?
It is going to be awkward, but then there are many iconographical evidence of big instrument held this way. Yeah, so I can actually show you some of the pictures later. But so it seems like some people liked the idea of playing the cello this way, vertically. Yeah. So, but then when you talk about violoncello piccolo, a lot of people would think that that's just 5-string instrument, right? But during the Bach's lifetime, the only time the violoncello piccolo, written in any music, appearing in any music, that's just the Bach cantatas. So I think right now there are like 9 or so cantatas existing, having this instrument as the obbligato instrument. And they would clearly specify violoncello piccolo, and just because we have Johann Christian Hofmann, this instrument maker in Leipzig, Bach's friend, made this instrument. We actually have like 3 surviving original instruments: one in Leipzig, one in Brussels, and one in California. Believe it or not. And so we know that Johann Christian Hofmann built those tiny instruments. So I think it's really plausible that Bach did have access to one of those tiny instruments. And when you look into this violoncello piccolo obbligato parts, sometimes you don't even touch the bottom C string. So, out of 9 cantatas, I think 5 cantatas would not even use the bottom C string. I don't remember clearly.
I mean, some of his D'Amour stuff is like that too, where you only need like 5 strings out of 6, even.
Yeah, right. And then in one case, in cantata 49 obbligato, you only need top 3 strings out of 5 strings. But some people would argue that he must have had 4-string violoncello piccolo and 5-string violoncello piccolo. But I really don't think so. Just like you were saying that he doesn't really use the whole strings in some cases, I would actually think that he was using the same instrument, 5-string instrument, for all those stuff. And so that's why you can explain he only used 3 strings out of 5, and that was still fine. You don't think that he had a 3-stringed violoncello piccolo, right?
No.
So I think that he was totally going after the particular timbre that this tiny cello can produce, but at this tiny string length, a shorter string length, it was actually difficult to make the strings, especially the bottom C string, that can speak and articulate cleanly under this bow. So I think he was even avoiding to use, the lower strings in some cases, and so he was definitely leaning toward using D string, A string, and E string on top to, write this obbligato parts. So what I think is that violoncello piccolo is not just a regular or vertically held 5-string instrument. So when he writes violoncello piccolo, he meant that very, very small violoncello piccolo that Johann Christian Hofmann was making in Leipzig. Yeah, so I was actually only use those instruments to really play the obligato. In some cases, when I'm asked to play some chamber music, of course I will bring it and play some cello part, and in some cases play some continuing instrument. But yeah, as you were mentioning, I don't think it is really meant to be a continuing instrument. I think it is a solo instrument, and I think the best part of this instrument is that easy tenor, timbre with really easy access and not having any pressure or the tension like the thumb position of the normal cello can have. So
Yeah, but the low notes are pretty lame. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, people are coming up with the ways to create those strings. So modern 5-string instrument, or I should say modern violoncello piccolo or modern violoncello da spalla these days, they have pretty good C strings that it's so easy to speak. Sometimes it's a tungsten core strings, and sometimes it's the gut core, but then they have the different ways to twist the gut core in a way that they can keep minimizing the diameter to smaller so that it's still easy to play.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't argue that they don't speak or sound. I just think compared to a cello.
Oh, no comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're missing a lot of
That's right.
of the sound.
That's right. Yep.
All right. Was that really all you wanted to ask me? I mean, I can tell you, I can answer anything, man.
Yeah, I know. I didn't think that I would be asked to ask you a question. So if I've known, then of course I would have some really interesting questions. But
do you just know everything? There's nothing you want to know?
Well,
it doesn't have to be about me.
Well, then let me ask you this, because we've been talking about some Bach stuff on the way here in the car. What do you have any favorite Bach cantata?
I mean, I just have some good memories of some.
Yeah.
Like that one D'Amore one that everybody plays on violin. That I forget which one it is.
Yeah.
With soprano in it. I know that narrows it down. I like playing the Passions and the B minor mass and stuff. Yeah. Cantatas, I seem to forget them as soon as I move on to the next week.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty normal. Yeah. But do you remember any particular obligato part that you played that you loved so much?
I mean, not that many of them have solos. I know there's some in even the Lutheran masses have some.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we can work on that together and find some.
Yeah.
I feel like if you wanted to know about Bach, I'm not the one to ask.
Yeah, but I appreciate your playing, the Bach playing. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to play Bach.
Yeah.
Could be worse things to do. All right, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Thanks for being on the show.
No problem.
And thanks for listening. Please subscribe and give us lots of stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Keep buying my arrangements on www.bachfor2.com. And keep making music with each other. I'll be back.